Welcome to English Storycast, your daily boost of clear, simple English. Let's begin.
Hello, my name is Ivana. I'm a first-year medical student, and I'm from a small town, a place very far from here. Right now, I am sitting on the floor of my new apartment. It's not very big. There is a window, a mattress, and a lot of boxes. Outside, I can hear the sounds of a big American city. It's all so new. In my hands, I have a letter. It's my acceptance letter to one of the best medical schools in the country. It feels like a dream. But to understand my story, you need to know why I am in this room. My journey here, it did not start with a love for science. It started with a promise. I was 15 years old when my grandmother got sick. I remember the hospital, the clean, white smell, and the quiet, serious sounds. I remember sitting next to her bed, holding her hand. My family was there. We were all so scared. The doctors would come in and talk. They used big, complicated words that nobody understood. I watched my parents' faces, full of confusion and fear. I felt so small, so helpless. After she was gone, I stood outside the hospital and the world felt gray. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. It was a quiet promise, just for me. I said, I will become a doctor, and I will never feel this helpless again. So now, I look at this letter again. It's not just paper. It's the beginning of that promise. And it feels very heavy in my hands. The first few weeks were exciting. The university was like something from a movie. The buildings were old and beautiful, full of history. The professors were brilliant. I felt so proud to be there. I bought all my books. I sat in the front of the class. I thought, okay, Ivana, you are ready. The hard part is over. I was wrong. The hard part was just beginning. I remember my first study group. There were 4 of us in a small room in the library. 2 students from California, 1 from New York. They were all so smart, so confident. They started talking about the lecture from that morning. And they were speaking so fast. I understood the words. The English was not the problem. But the way they spoke, it was different. One of them said, we really need to hit the books for the exam next week. Hit the books? I looked at the books on the table. Why would we hit them? Then another student said, yes, I think I need to pull an all-nighter. Pull a night? I was so confused. They all laughed at something, and I just smiled. I felt like I was watching a movie without subtitles. I was in the room, but I was not part of the conversation. In my home country, I was always the top student. I always understood everything. But in that small library room, for the first time in my life, I felt slow. I felt stupid. My strong academic English felt useless. For the first time, I felt truly lost in translation, and a cold, quiet fear started to grow in my heart. The problem was not just the language. Soon, I discovered a bigger problem. A few weeks later, we had our first clinical simulation. We practiced talking to actors who pretended to be sick patients. I was so nervous, but also excited. This was my chance. This was real medicine. This was where I could finally be the kind of doctor from my promise. I watched my classmates. They were so efficient. They asked the questions from the textbook. Check, check, check. They were fast. They were like perfect machines. Then it was my turn. The patient was an older man who was scared of a procedure. I remembered my grandmother. I remembered her fear. So I sat down, I did not look at my checklist. I looked at his eyes. I asked him about his family. I tried to make a connection, to make him feel safe. For a moment, I felt like a real doctor. But then my instructor stopped me. She was a kind woman, but her voice was firm. She said, "Ivana, your compassion is good, but we have 5 other patients to see in the next hour. You must be faster. You must be more efficient." Her words hit me harder than the fast conversations in the library. This wasn't about slang or idioms. This was about the heart of medicine. The system here was a machine, a fast, impersonal machine. And I started to feel a terrible sadness. I thought, how can I keep my promise in a place like this? For the first time, I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake.
In my second semester, I had a class with a professor named Dr. Evans. He was a famous doctor, very brilliant, but also very tough. All the students were afraid of him. His classes were difficult, and he asked many, many questions. I always tried to be invisible in his class. I sat in the back. I was so afraid he would ask me a question and I would sound stupid. One day, we were discussing a difficult disease, and then it happened. He said my name, Ivana. My heart stopped. He asked me a very technical question about the disease. I knew the answer from the textbook, but my mind was empty. I felt all the other students looking at me. I said a few words, but my voice was shaking. I could not find the right vocabulary. There was a long, terrible silence. I felt so embarrassed. But then, Dr. Evans did something strange. He looked at me and he changed the question. He asked, "Okay, Ivana, forget the textbook. Tell me this. When a patient has this disease, what are they afraid of?" The question surprised me. It was not about science. It was about people. And I knew the answer to that. I thought of my grandmother. I remembered her face. I said, "They are afraid of being a burden. They are afraid of not being understood. And they are afraid of being alone." The classroom was quiet. Dr. Evans looked at me for a long time. Then he gave a small nod. He said, "The textbook can teach you the science. It can't teach you the patient. Don't forget that." For the rest of the class, I was confused, but it was a different kind of confusion. It was the first time a professor did not see my bad English. It was the first time someone saw me.
The moment I was most afraid of arrived during our final exam. It was another simulation, but this time it was very serious. Our final grade depended on it. Dr. Evans was one of the professors watching us. The scenario was this: an old man, a patient, was very agitated. He was scared and confused, and he was refusing a simple but important medical test. He reminded me so much of my grandmother. My team of students tried to talk to him. They followed the protocol from the textbook. They explained the science, they listed the risks, but their words were like a wall. The man only became more scared. The clock was ticking. We were failing the exam. My heart was beating so fast. The voice in my head, the voice of fear, was screaming, "Follow the rules. Do what the textbook says. Don't fail." But then I heard another voice. It was the quiet voice of Dr. Evans in my memory. The textbook can't teach you the patient. And I looked at the old man's eyes. I saw my grandmother. I saw her fear of not being understood. In that moment, I had to make a choice. I could be a perfect student, or I could be the doctor from my promise. I let the checklist in my hand fall to my side. I walked past my surprised classmates. I pulled a chair close to the patient's bed. I sat down, so my eyes were at the same level as his. I did not talk about medicine. I just said, quietly, "Hello, my name is Ivana. It looks like you are having a difficult day. I can see you are afraid. It's okay to be afraid." I knew I was breaking the rules of the test. I knew I was running out of time. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about failing. I was just trying to connect.
The old man looked at me. His eyes were softer now. He took a slow breath, and then he started to talk. He told me about his wife. He told me he was lonely. I just listened. After a few minutes, he looked at me and said, "Okay, dear, I will do the test." When the simulation ended, my classmates were silent. I didn't know if I had passed or failed, but Dr. Evans walked over to me. He did not look angry. He looked thoughtful. He said, "Medicine is not just about fixing bodies, Ivana. It's about healing people. You did good work today." His words were a gift. In that moment, everything became clear. All my life, I was running away from that memory in the hospital. I was so afraid of that feeling of being helpless. But I was wrong. That memory was not my weakness. It was my strength. My experience, my past, it gave me something the textbooks could not. It gave me empathy. It allowed me to understand the patient's fear, not just their disease. My journey is not over. I am still a student. I still have so much to learn. But something is different now. I am no longer just the girl who is afraid of making mistakes. I am a doctor in training who knows that compassion is as important as science. I am not lost in translation anymore. I finally found my own voice, and I will use it to be the doctor I promised myself I would become.